Hi everyone, today we are going to talk about user input and some additional topics in Python. User input is just taking in whatever the user types in or wants to type in, and we can do all sorts of methods with those. At the end of this video, I'm going to do a worked example of a program that will take in user input and determine how many times a word appears. So for now, let's just start with the basics. User input can be taken in with this input method, right? And that just allows for the user to type in some sort of value. We are going to assign this input to a variable called int with this equals operator. If we were to run this, and at the end we'll say print int, so we know what's happening. Let's run this and see what happens. We get some sort of cursor, and then we get to type in any message. So I'll type in Python, and we get Python. You can even have your own custom message with this input function. So I'll say, oops. So I am going to say, type in whatever, right? And let's run this. We should get some sort of message saying, whatever you put here, type in whatever. I'm going to type in Python again, and we get the result, which is Python. And just so you know that I'm not like cheating or anything, I'm going to say Python or whatever is great. And remember, you can't concatenate a string with any other data type, but the thing with this input function is that its result is always returned as a string, no matter what the user types in. So even if I were to type in 4, it would say 4 is great, which makes no sense, but it's just an example, so it shouldn't matter. Just remember that user input is taken in the form of a string, no matter what the user types in. So that's why this print using the addition operator would work. So yes, this input function comes in handy. For Python 2 users, I think it's raw input like this. You use this method instead of input, but that's just for Python 2. Otherwise, use input. So yes, we have just gone over user input. Now I am going to talk about, I hope I haven't missed anything, but I'm going to talk about casting. So as you already may know, this input function returns a string, and that would not be great if you wanted to return an integer value. So the way we do that is using casting. There are also other ways to do it, but I believe this is the simplest. And casting is just using a constructor to alter a value's data type. And what that means is we are going to use a function like this, which has the name of the data type, and then you're calling that function. Remember, Python is an object-oriented language, which means that all these data types are actually classes. So when we call this, we're initializing it, and it's called a constructor. So we are going to say inp equals input, just enter something like this. And as you may know, this is going to return a string, so the way we change that is with this integer function. And let's comment this out. I still want you guys to see it. So if we were to run this and then print imp plus 1, let's run this, enter something. Obviously, we have to enter an integer for this to register, so let's enter in 5, and we get 6, because this print statement is printing out the input plus 1. Remember that you have to type in something that can be changed to an integer. If you type something like a string, that will not work. So if I were to type in like Python, this will not work because you cannot change this these group of letters to an integer. The thing is, you can change it float to an integer, and that just rounds down. So 4.5 becomes 4. negative 3.6 becomes negative 3, I think. I'm not sure, but yes. So an integer, when applied with the float, just rounds down. So yes, this is using casting. It's essentially the same for other data types. Float is like that. String is like this. If we were to have some kind of integer value like 4, then this float constructor would just change that to 4.0. So this comes in really handy when you are trying to make sure the user types in something that can be changed into an integer. So yeah, this is the basic how you do casting. Now I'm going to talk about something that is a little more advanced, which is formatting string methods. So as you know, the user is not, you can't always be trusted to type in the right thing. So in order to parse the data correctly, there are certain techniques we can use to format the strings. So let's do the same thing. Inp equals input. Enter in a word. So there we go. And now if we run this, we should get a message saying enter in a word, and the user gets to type in something. And if we were to print input, it would not be able to filter out all the unnecessary spaces that a user types. So something like Bob, and like a bunch of spaces that would be printed along with all these spaces. And if you're somewhat of an OCD person and you don't want this stuff, there's a way to change that with the strip method. So there are 3 different types of strip methods. There's rstrip, lstrip, and normal strip. So rstrip strips all spaces and tabs from the right side, lstrip strips all the spaces and tabs from the left side, and strip does both of these simultaneously. So I would do something like this, dot strip, and that way, whatever the user types in, something, let's do the same thing, Bob, with a bunch of unnecessary tabs and spaces, it would print it just like this with no additional spaces. So that's how the strip method comes in handy. When you're parsing data, you don't want too many unnecessary tabs that can throw you off a little bit. So that's how the strip methods work. It's essentially the same with right strip and left strip. Now I'm going to talk about formatting. So there's a way to format by prefixing a string with, let's keep this strip here, prefixing a string with f, and then putting a variable or value in curly braces. So the way we do that is we just say print. You can assign it to a variable if you want. So we're going to say let's remove that, your favorite word is, and obviously we need to find a way to put this input directly in the string. Of course, we can do something like this, but there's another way to do it, and that is use curly braces and put input. This won't work. This will just print in the string, so we need to prefix it with f. And these prefixing things, they just, there's also b for it changes into bytes. Stuff like that. So if we were to prefix with f, f is for formatting, and we use these curly braces. Whatever is in these curly braces could be interpreted as a string within the string. So let's try this out, and I'll say Python, and let's run this. Your favorite word is Python. So this is how you format a string. I use this quite often. But it's not really that important. You don't need, it's not fundamental or anything. But yeah, there's also a split method. That's the last method I'm going to talk about. And what that does is it splits a sentence or a string actually, with multiple words or characters, it splits them into equal parts. It splits them into elements of an array based on a certain character. So let's get this out of the way, and we'll say dot split. And the default with the split method with no arguments will just split it based on the spaces. So if we run this, let's pause this. We are going to say print input. So if we were to run this, enter in a word, I am actually going to enter in a sentence. I'll say the dog jumped over the cow or something like that. There we have it. Input, the variable imp actually gets changed into a list. The split method automatically changes it into a list. You can turn it into a tuple if you want. So what it does is it splits it based on the spaces. As you can see here, all the spaces are gone. It's essentially the opposite of the join method. So it's pretty basic. You can put in a custom character here too. We can put D, and then we just get enter a word. We'll say the dog, same thing, jumped over the cow. And here we get the list split by the character D, but it doesn't really look nice, but that doesn't matter.